all the platinum discs on the wall and all that sort of stuff. There's some nice records being made here. But it's right underneath Putney railway line. So every sort of 15 minutes or so you might hear a as the train goes over. But I'll try and turn the volume of my mic down when that happens. But other than that, if everyone's ready to go, this is the sound of an E. I've just tuned it, so I think I can use this guitar. See if you can tune your guitar to that E. We won't waste a minute on this though. Here are some tuning notes. There you go. I'm sure you've all got tuners and you can crack on anyway with that anyhow. All right, well, what I wanted to talk about today was just hopefully to introduce a few factors about chords that maybe you might not have come across thus far. Now, I'm assuming that most of you will know quite a few ways to play a major chord. Now, I'm kind of having to make a decision here as to whether you see my face or the guitar. We'll go for face for now, and guitar when it's important. So, just to check, could you put your finger up as a sort of a yes or make a gesture if you know how to play a major bar chord? I don't want to assume anything. All right, that looks like everybody. Fantastic. And same question again. Would you be able to play a minor bar chord as well? Fingers, hands up. All right, that's pretty good. Not bad. Okay. Well, let's just whiz over 5 minutes of theory. Now, often with chordal discussions, we can end up talking about 7th and 9th and 11th and 13th, but we're not going to do that today. The idea of today's class is to try to be very succinct about what you can do with standard 3-note chords. And 3-note chords are called triads. So, just to make sure everybody understands where we're starting from today, I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions, hopefully, just so that I know everyone's cool. And if you're not, I'll very quickly show you some answers as to how to figure these things out. And also, we've got tons of literature on this particular subject. So if there's anything I cover tonight that you don't know, hassle me or Ronnie, and there's bags of stuff I'll send you afterwards, which should hopefully set you straight. So make a note of anything that you don't understand, and we'll talk about that later on. But here come a couple of questions just to make sure everybody knows a little bit about chords, and I'm happy that you do. So, easy question first. What notes make up a C major chord? There's only 3 notes in a C major chord. You've got 30 seconds to write them down.
Okay, we're in, thank you.
Hello everybody. Right, here's my piano keyboard. I'm going to put that right on my head like this for you. You might find that useful to help you answer these questions. So, Graham and Anne, you've just arrived. What notes are in a C major chord?
C, E, G.
I'm not going to say yes or no yet. Keep it to yourself.
Jamie, you did ask.
I meant everybody. All right. So we won't dwell on these questions. We are going to push forward. So that the way to figure these answers out, first of all, you make the scale, the major scale, that has the same name as the chord that I asked you. So first of all, work out a C major scale. There goes a train. Okay, so the notes in a C major scale, there's a C. We go C plus a tone is D, D plus a tone is E, E plus a semitone is F, plus a tone is G, plus a tone is A, plus a tone is B, plus a semitone is C. So that's your C major scale, just the 1 notes. Now to work out a major chord, all you do is you take the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th note from the same major scale as the name of the chord I asked you. Okay? So, Graham, you were right. It's C, E, and G. Okay? Now, just so that I can get a little bit of feedback from folks, so that I know that I'm not going too fast or too slow, hands up if you got that right. Please. Oh, good. Very good. Okay, so, next thing, just to make sure everyone's happy with this. What you would do to a C major chord to make it C minor, all you do is you take the 3rd, so the middle note of that triad, you flatten it by 1 semitone, and that's it. So the only difference between a C major chord and a C minor chord is the fact that the middle note, which is an E, is actually an E flat in the minor chord. It's a semitone lower. Okay? And I'll tell you what that sounds like. Again, I'm fairly certain most of you will know this, but what we're going to go on to in a moment depends that you absolutely get it, so I'm just being careful. So here is a C major chord played at the 8th fret as a bar chord on your guitar. This is my lovely Avalon guitar made by Loudon when he stopped making guitars for a few years. The company continued. Anyway, here is a C major chord. This finger here is playing the 3rd, which is an E. Take that finger off to release the E flat fret down in there. Push it a little bit harder, and then you get that. Okay? Now I'm hoping that's not anything particularly special to you guys. I know I've met quite a few of you before on various courses, so I know we've had this conversation. So can I just check, does everybody understand the difference between a major chord and a minor chord? Hands up if you're cool with that. Okay, as I said a moment ago, if there's anything you're not sure about, I'm not going to talk about anything that isn't notated in some of the stuff I've got on my computer and Ronnie's Dropbox, so just let us know if I say something you don't understand, and we'll make sure afterwards that we clear that up for you. So, if it's fair to assume that everybody knows what a major chord is and a minor chord is, then answer me this, please. Could you tell me what notes are in, let me think of a nice one, a B major chord and a B minor chord? You've got 2 minutes. Now, try to do this without your guitar. If you're already an accomplished guitar player and you know this without thinking about it, that's great, well done. But see if you can do it without needing a guitar or a piano. Just imagine it in your head. So first of all, work out the B major scale. Then take the root, the 3rd and the 5th. And that gives you your B major chord. Once you're happy with that, all you do is you take the same chord and you flatten the 3rd by 1 semitone. It's like countdown, isn't it? Getting told off. 30 seconds. Hey, tell you what, there's some nice guitars in the room. Phil Smith, yours is looking particularly beautiful. P90s, man, all the way. Okay, so here come the answers. Anybody want 10 seconds more, 20 seconds more? All right, let's crack on then. So, the notes in a B major scale. First, you've got to do that with no guitars if you're feeling clever. And those notes are B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp. So B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. Now, to get the notes of a B major chord, all you do is take root, 3rd, and 5th, 1, 3, 5. So the answer to the first part of that question is B, D sharp, and F sharp. If you got that, give me a yo, like that. Nice. I think that's everybody, I think so. All right, well done. And the second part of the question was, what are the notes in a B minor chord? Well, they're the same. All you do is you flatten the 3rd. So that means you take the sharp off that D sharp, throw it in the bin, and then you get B, D, and F sharp. Is everybody all right with that? Great, really good. Now, I only have one more question for you before I start telling you what we're really here for. And this is just to make sure that I know that you know how to classify chord tones with the right names, because what we're about to do is dependent upon that. So let's say we had an A flat chord. What I'd like you to do is work out what notes are in an A flat major chord, and then what notes are in an A flat minor chord. Now that second part of the question requires a little bit of thinking about what you would call the 3rd of an A flat minor. So give yourself a few moments just to have a go at that, and I'd like to just make sure we're absolutely clear of the nomenclature involved in how you name the degrees of chords and scales. So First thing you do, A flat major scale. I'm trying not to go too fast here at all. Alright, so first of all, the answer to what notes are in an A flat major scale. A flat plus a tone is B flat. B flat plus a tone is C. C plus a semitone is D flat. D flat plus a tone is E flat. E flat plus a tone is F. F plus a tone is G. And then G plus a semitone brings you back to the root, which is A flat again. So, if you got that right, you're doing really well. Well done. So, the answer to the first question was, what notes would you find in an A flat major chord? Well, they are A flat, C, and E flat. Okay, if you got that, nice one. If you're starting to answer major and minor chords in those kind of flat keys, that's starting to get definitely on the right path. Now then, the reason I asked you this question in particular was, what would you call the notes that make up an A flat minor chord? Well, at this point, most people would probably accidentally say A flat, B, and E flat. Okay? Now, the term involved here is enharmonically. So, enharmonically speaking, that's the correct pitch. But it's not the right name. You have to call it C flat. Okay, because when you're talking about the way that you name chords, you need to make sure that whatever happens, they're always referred to as root third, so 3 alphabet letters higher, and fifth. Okay, so if you called it A flat, B, and E flat, well, that would be something along the lines of root sharp 2, 5, alphabetically speaking. So that's definitely something, if you've got a little notepad of things to write down that will help you with music theory, that one's a big clanger. So chords should always be stacked in thirds, unless they're special effect chords. That's a different topic. And their names should always reference the alphabet letters, which are 3 notes apart. Okay? So is everybody okay with that? Can I move on? Yeah? All right. I'm going to go for it. Okay, don't forget, if any of that didn't make sense, get in touch later on and we'll sort you out. All right, well, this is the point of today's lesson. There's 2 things I want to teach you. I want to try to fill in a little bit of gaps of knowledge that I found that I had, and you might have as well, and also offer you something which might be that little bit more creative. So the first thing is, having a look at my guitar here. A moment ago, we talked about how to play a C major bar chord. Let's make sure this is a bit better. Using that shape. Okay? Now, spend a second checking whether you know the names of each note, and if you do, try and clock whether the string and the fret you're pointing to is either the root, the third, or the fifth of the chord. It won't be anything else, because we're not adding any other notes to the chord. It'll only be root, third, or 5. Now, I'll give you 10 seconds to play your chord, and have a look, thinking from the root note downwards. Obviously the first note's a C, isn't it? Okay. So the second note of this chord is this. Now, try this. Hum those 2 notes, and instead of using your eyes to tell you whether the chord you're playing, whether the note you're playing is the root, the third, or the fifth, why don't you let your ears do it? So here's your root. The next note. If you're unsure how to determine whether that's the root, third, or fifth, then sing a major scale from that root note, and you do it like this. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Of course, I always explain things in the key of C, but I have a bass voice, so it's always the worst possible key for me to sing at you. I use the word at out of choice. I'm not singing with you, it's at, and it's terrible. But anyway, so this is a C major scale. Doesn't matter whether you know how to play it or not. Today this is more of an oral lesson. So, we've got a root. The next note is the fifth. That's a G. So the fifth note of the scale is the next note in this chord. Now, what happens next? Your little finger's playing that note there, which is the 10th fret of the D string. Well, that's a C. So far, we've got all these three bottom notes here, and they're not actually determining whether the chord is major or minor, because there's no third in there yet. So we've got a big, fat, heavy power chord at the bottom here. But the next note, that's your E, okay? So we'll call this your harmony note. This is the determiner note of this chord, and that's what tells you whether this chord is major or minor. So you've got C, G, C, E, and then the last two notes are repetitions of stuff you've already had before. You've got the fifth again, and you've got the root again. Okay? Now, the reason I'm telling you all of this stuff is because I'd like you to write down. You can read the sheet I gave you, but if you do that, then you might read ahead, and that's spoil fun, but whatever. The interval structure of this chord is what I want you to pay attention to, and that is root, fifth, root, third, fifth, root. Or R5R, 3-5R. Okay? Now, this is a very guitar-y way of playing chords. Now, piano players don't play chords like that. Piano players play chords that actually tend to be like this, where you're actually playing the notes of the chord in the correct order. Root, third, fifth, root, third, fifth, root. Okay? That would be how a piano player would do it. But that's a very difficult chord to play on the guitar. Generally, we do it like this. Now, that's all well and good. I'm assuming that in terms of the chord involved here, I'm not showing you anything new. I'm guessing you're all pretty cool with that. But just a brief, quick point to make sure you get a good tone out of it. Remember, when you're fretting anything on the guitar, the idea is to get as close to the next fret as you can, without ever getting your finger on top of the fret wire. Because if you do that, it starts to sound dull, because your finger's starting to mute it. And if you go too far back the other way, then the fret bounces off the fret. The string bounces off the fret, excuse me. So it's always a bit of a compromise on this instrument, but the idea here is to get these two fingers as far forward as you can so that you get a lovely tone. Now, I'll play that for you. Okay. Now, I've taught lessons before where I've been speaking to a student and I've said, can you play for me a bar chord, please? And they go like that. And I go, well, that needs a bit of work, doesn't it? And then you often get, well, no, I can do it. It's easy. Let's do something more difficult. And you have to say, wait a minute, it didn't sound very good. So if you already know how to play a bar chord, just go back and check to make sure it sounds absolutely glistening, you know, really lovely, like that. And make sure that the next thing, which is the obvious next movement to turn it to the minor, is just as bright. You'll find that the most important note of the C minor chord is also the most difficult to play. You'll get that. So you have to squeeze as hard as you can. Now, sometimes you can actually use this spare finger to push down on the top of your first finger to increase the pressure. Now, it's a bit of a cheat, but if it helps, that's fine. But your chords should sound absolutely lovely. Now, Guy's waving his hand. Have you got a question? Switch your mic on and go for it.
Jamie, do you always put the bar down first of all before the shape?
Oh, no. I put it all down at the same time.
Okay.
That's what you should be aiming for eventually. But while you're getting that fast at it, you can choose a finger which I like to call the landmark finger, where you think, right, that's my base point, and then you build it around it. But I would say probably use the bar chord as your spine first and then build from there. But ultimately, you want to be able to go like that, bang, with no hesitation at all. Everything together. Okay?
And Jamie, is the bar finger flat against the fretboard or what?
Totally. Yeah, this is something that comes up a lot. Now, if you have a look at my first finger, it isn't bent at all anywhere. Okay? Now, often you get that, but that's not going to sound very good, especially on the minor chord. or you get that. That's not going to sound particularly good either. It has to be that your first finger protrudes maybe about 5 millimeters maximum off the top of the string, but the idea is that this knuckle here doesn't bend at all, because if it does, when you play a minor chord, the most important note is going to disappear into that sort of the natural crevice of your joint, and it'll sound like that. And as you can hear, there's no minor third in there, so that sad chord doesn't sound sad. It just sounds a bit meh. Okay. So, these are the notes in a C major chord using this bar chord shape. C, G, C, E, G, C. Now, those of you that have, had a lesson or two with me in the past will know one of my big things, which has really helped me out in my musical life, is to try and reassess the stuff you already know. So try this as a little exercise. You all know how to play this chord, I'm sure. But could you sing it? So here's your root note. Now what I'm asking you, I don't mind whether your voice is accurate or not, whether you can accurately pitch. What I'm interested in is whether you can imagine the sound of the fifth of the chord above it and sing it, and then the root, and then the third, and then the fifth, and then the root in that order. Now I'll show you, that would sound like this if you played it as an exercise. You'd get root, fifth, octave, third, fifth, octave. Now that's way too high for me, but it doesn't matter whether you can sing in tune or not. The idea is that by attempting it, you start to train your ear so that you can hear all these intervals. All that sort of stuff. You know exactly what's coming out of your hands before you do it, rather than just going C major. So have 30 seconds to try this now. Make sure your microphones are off so that nobody can hear you. Allow yourself only the first note. And then ascend the major scale in your mind, in your mind's ear, which is a bit of a musician's naff phrase for your internal ear, but it is very true. You can imagine the sound without it being there. Now, what do we want? We would like to hear the fifth on top of that. Ooh, dee. And then we want the octave on top of that. Dee. Sing it before you actually play it. Da. Then the fifth. Ba. And then the root. Ba. Now, I gave you the answer to that one. Try the same thing with your C minor. Now I'm going to give you a whole minute to do that, where I'm just going to sit in absolute awkward silence because I want you to have a go, okay? Now, if you're good at this, then nice one. You've got a well-trained ear. Root, fifth, octave, minor third, as opposed to major third, minor third. Now, I can't stress it enough. Do this with everything you already know. If you already know how to play a ton of chords, let's say you know how to play an A7 chord. I'm just going to pick one at random. You don't have to copy me. Well, play the chord once, play the root note, and then ask yourself, can I sing the notes in that chord without playing them? And if I can't, that means I haven't really focused in on the sounds that I'm making. I've only really focused in on the shapes I'm playing. So I'll sing this one to you, you lucky people. A, E, G, C sharp, E, G, and then A again. Now the point that I'm making over and over again is that you can clearly hear that my voice is terrible, but my ears are very good, and it's because of these exercises, reassessing everything that you already know and not being ashamed or embarrassed to sing quite loud, but be disciplined with yourself to make sure that the pitch that you're singing is the same as the pitch that you're playing. All right, now I need to crack on a little bit because there are two things to talk about today, and we're about a third of the way through the first one, so I'm going to bash on a little bit, okay? So bearing in mind that we are we've explored this 6th string root C major chord. It's called a 6th string root, probably for obvious reasons, but I'll say it anyway. Because the name of the chord is derived from the position of your first finger, which is on the E string, which is the 6th string, okay? That might seem like I'm stating the obvious, but the next step of this is dependent upon that. So now, the next thing that we're going to do is learn how to play the same chord with the same interval structure, but from the 5th string, okay? Now, it's highly likely that you know this shape as well, but what I wasn't certain about, and I've come across so many times, is that a lot of the time people don't realize that that chord is exactly the same as that chord. It's just missing one note. It's the same octave, the same register, the same notes in the same intervallic structure. It's only missing one note. So here is the chord. This is your... Oh, I should have said to you. If you want to regard this as derivative of the caged system, then that's an E-shaped bar chord. Okay? There's lots of ways to classify these things, and I think the caged system plus the root system, which is what I'm explaining to you now, are the best ways to do it. So that's an E-shaped C major. This is an A-shaped C major. Now, humour me please, can you write out the notes as they appear from that chord, going from the A string downwards? Now remember, this is what's called a 5th string root, because we're not concerning ourselves with the bottom E string. Okay? We've already done that. We've classified a family of chords that's derived from the E string. Now we're doing the same thing with the same chord, but deriving it from the A string. And the way to do that with the bar chord is to use the A shape, which is you know, that fella. So you've got 30 seconds to write out the names of the notes as they appear from the A string down to the floor. I wish you could see all the gear that's behind this monitor. This room is like 500 degrees. It's so hot in here because there are preamps, valve amps, Fender Rhodes, Marshalls, all the way down there. It's mad. I'll show you before the lesson's finished. There's some cool stuff. Okay, if you've done that and you found it dead easy, can you do the same thing with the minor derivative of that family? So C major and C minor, using your A-shaped cage system, so that we're learning how to classify it as a 5th string root bar chord. Bit of a wordy sentence that, but... Okay. Time for some answers. So you should find it's the same answer, but there's one note missing. So you've got C, then you've got G again. That's still the interval of a 5th, or a power chord. Then you've got the octave again. So now we've got C, G, C, E, played by your pinky. And then the top note is the 5th. Okay, now the one note that this chord doesn't have, that the other does, is there's no secondary root on the top. That second octave, we can't do that because we're using that string and we've placed a G on the top. So this chord is a 5th string root, and quite conveniently it only has 5 notes in it as well. This is a nice easy way to memorize it. So it's the same interval structure. It goes root, sorry you can't see me, it goes root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. Okay? Now when you play your C minor chord, the interval structure is exactly the same. The only difference is that your E has become an E flat. So you've got root, 5th, root, minor 3rd, 5th. Okay. Now nobody looks terrified, which is really good. Is everybody okay with this? It's not blowing anyone's mind? We're okay. Good. So Up to this point, forgive me if I'm telling you stuff you already know. I'm just trying to make sure that there is a little bit of a methodology for you to classify some of the stuff that you already know, rather than, you know, I found when I was learning the guitar that I just kept learning stuff and it was in no way connected. And I freaked myself out thinking, well, how am I ever going to remember all of this stuff? It's just, here's a chord, here's another chord with a 7 on the top of it. What? But actually, if you get comfortable thinking about your chords as families which are based with an interval pattern, which is what we're discussing today, you'll find that you will much more easily be able to memorize swathes of chords, you know, 7ths, 9ths, 11ths, 13ths. You'll realize that they're all structured in the same way, and you'll be able to memorize them in lots of different places according to the grouping that they are demonstrating. So we'll move on to the next step now, which is, this bit might be something new to you. I hope it is. So far we've learnt C major like this. We've learned C major like this. Now I'm going to teach you C major like this. Now this is beautiful. This sounds like a mandolin. And it's, you may notice, for those of you who've got bat ears, that it's actually an octave higher. Okay? So, the first chord had its root on the 8th fret of the E string, that's a C. The second chord had its root on the 3rd fret of the A string, and that's the same. Those two notes are the same. That's me playing both of them. But this one has its root note on the 10th fret of the D string. Now, you can't play the C that you played before on the D string any lower than this, so this is forcing you up the octave. Now, what we're going to do here, this is called a 4th string root major bar chord, and what it's really doing, making use of a D major shape. Now, if we just go all the way down here to play your D major the way you normally would, everybody knows a D, don't they? Well, all you do, swap those fingers out so that your first finger is now free. So it was that, now do that. And the reason that we've done that is because we want to be able to use our first finger in the same way that the nut was providing us with the root note. So what we do, we move it all the way up to the 10th fret, and you should find 10th fret is a C, and then you've got the 12th, 13th and 12th fret, which spells out a C major triad, but you're using a D major shape. That's the bit I'm getting at. Now, most people are slightly terrified of this chord because it's hard. It's not one that just lands in your fingers very easily, but it's one which is all over pop music, and it's one of the most musical things that you can do on the guitar when you're playing with a piano player or some other chordal instrument, because you'll find a piano player will probably be playing, or a keyboard player will be playing in that kind of range. That's the middle of the piano. Now if you try and compete with the piano on the guitar, everybody has a bad day, because the guitar is, as I said to you a moment ago, the interval structure of the guitar is not the same as the way a piano player would do it, so you find yourself competing in the same harmonic range. Now, if you want to sound really musical playing with another instrument that plays chords, well, spend some time getting really good at your major chords like that and your minor chords like that. And this is all over Stairway to Heaven, by the way, and everything the Eagles do, because they have, let's talk about the Eagles for a second, because they have two guitars. They have one fella all the way down here, and they have somebody else all the way up here, and rarely do they play together. And often there's a 12th string in there as well, but that's just something else. But listen to it, it's beautiful. A little bit of vibrato on the chord sounds gorgeous. So you may already know that chord, but I would place a hefty bet that it's not your most confident chord. I think if I said to you play a C major, everybody would go bang. And then they'd go, ah, well, I kind of know that one. And then they'd go, well, I could work that one out in an hour. You know, so make sure that one's in your bag of tricks, because it's gorgeous. And if you're playing with a piano player or another guitar player, then make sure that the pair of you split the roles, so you don't play in the same position, if you like. Now then, why is this one interesting? Because this one as well follows the same interval structure as the other two. Your root is there, that's our C. The next note is a G, and as we discovered momentarily ago, that's the 5th. Then your pinky plays the C again, and then your spare ring finger, that plays the 3rd. Now, I'll tell you one other thing which makes this chord special. We established before that when you play a C major here, the 3rd is buried in the middle. So it's not the highest note. When you play this one here, the 3rd is not buried in the middle, but it's still kind of close to the middle. But when you play this one, this is the one version of this chord that we're discussing, where the 3rd, which is the most important note of the chord, is on the top. Now, if you want to play music that sounds particularly beautiful on the guitar, and you always want to pick the right chord, try and pick a small, high-range voicing, which is what this is, with the important note of the chord on the top. Okay, and in this instance, the E is the thing that makes it major, or the E flat is the thing that makes it minor. And the fact that you're putting it on the top makes it sound really, really harmonic. Now, let's make sure that you're good at switching between major and minor. And there's a trick you can do with this. Most people dismantle the whole chord to try and make the minor chord, dismantle the whole chord to try and remake the major chord. Well, you actually don't need to do that. Keep your first finger on and keep your little finger on, and just get used to doing that. Just switch those two around like that. Feels a bit wonky the first few times you do this, but there's no need to demolish the chord. You just have to get used to switching your inner voicings around, okay? So, have a moment to just consider what we've talked about. Write out the names of the notes as they appear. This chord is called a C major 4th string root. Hopefully you know why now, because its root is on the 4th string, which is the D. And because it only has 4 notes in the chord, because there's only 4 available, the top 4 strings, we're taking the benefit of the harmony note being on the top of the chord, and it's lovely. Next thing to do, if you find that is all easy, practice playing the minor version. And then, same as before, play the root only, and then test yourself. Can you sing the intervals in that chord as they appear without playing them on the guitar, by imagining first the root, then the 5th, then the root, and then the 3rd? Now, if you can't do that, luckily the chord will tell you how to do that. All you have to do is pluck each note and then learn to sing it. So pluck the low note and then the second note and sing that interval. Then pluck the low note again and sing the next note and sing that interval. Okay? You practice it like this. Do, dee, do, dee, do, da, do, dee. Ooh, got it wrong myself. Dee, do, dee. Like that. Okay? You'll find you'll get it wrong now and again. I just did. But it's wonderful for your ear. And I know I'm talking a lot today, but the thing I really want to say in every one of these sessions that I'm going to do is that really the thing that we should be working on here is not really our technical development on the instrument, it's our musical development on the instrument. If you can get your ears preempting what your hands are doing, so you could pick any note that your hands are playing on any chord and then isolate it without plucking the string and retrieve the sound of that note from your head without plucking it, then that will start teaching you the rules of music. And it'll do so in a way that doesn't require any theory anyway. You only need a little bit of theory in order to train your ear properly. You just really need to pay attention to some of the stuff that you already know, in my experience. So, oof, intense. Said a lot already. So let me just summarize that for you really quick. C major as a 6th string root sounds like this. And it goes root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. Okay, C major, oh by the way, that's using an E major shape from the E caged system. Next, this is a C major chord using an A shape, and it's part of the same family because its interval structure is the same. What I mean by that is it's root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th again. The difference here is you've got the fifth on the top of the chord. Okay, so this chord has the root on the top. This chord has the fifth on the top. And this chord, my favourite, has the third on the top, and that's the one that'll sound prettiest. I like to call these mandolin voicings because they're in a similar register and they make your guitar sound like it's a mandolin. Okay. Now, this wasn't going to be one of the points I was going to make, but actually, if any of you noticed what I did there, you should try this too. You should explore what happens if you just move a finger left or right. You know, what I did there was I covered the top note up to make it a C sus4 chord. So if you can do that and that's nothing new to you, then make sure you can sing it. Have I made my point clearly? So just learn to sing everything that you can already do. And then take it off, it's the third again. Take it off entirely and that's a sus2 chord. See if you can make a song out of it. And you'll find, as you start to explore the chords you already know and what happens when you move a note up or a note down, you'll start to hear how people wrote songs. You know, the example I always use for this is the Doobie Brothers, Long Train Running. Now, I'm not going to spend today's lesson teaching you how to play that, but the point that I'm making is that was someone just exploring what happens if you take the fingers away but leave the spine there on a minor chord and then just hammer them on a knot. Ooh, cool, I could write a song with that, you know. And you start to hear these things all the way through the history of guitar playing. Someone's been sitting there with a glass of whiskey just exploring what happens if they do that, and then they've written a tune, and then you can trace it back. And the more experience you have of that, the more your ears get better at it, and you know what someone's playing even if you're not in the room with them. You know, if you work on your relative pitch, which is what we're doing today, and you work on the knowledge of what you're likely to come across with people playing the guitar, then when you hear something on the radio, you could pick your guitar up having never played it before and go bang and get it right the first time if you experiment in the way that we're talking here. So anyway, hopefully everybody understands that. So let's put it to the test. I'd like you to do this exercise on a let me think of a nice chord, on an E flat root. So I'd like you to work out an E flat major in 3 positions using the roots 6, 5 and 4, and then I'd like you to do the same thing with an E flat minor. Okay, now let's do a minute on that, because the second part of this lesson we haven't started yet, but it's exciting, so I do want to make sure I say it. As with all of these things, when you come across something new on the guitar, try to make sure that you do it intensively for a day or 2 so that you learn what you're doing, and then you make a habit of not forgetting that over the next 2 weeks. Do it again, maybe once or twice each day for the next 2 weeks. But this is the key bit. Try and use that knowledge that you've just learnt and put it in something that you already know. So if you already know a song that has a C major in it, then try and replace the C major in the song that you're happy with the C major that I've just told you here, so that that chord becomes part of your vocabulary. Because a chord on its own with no use, you won't remember it. No one does. You have to, as quickly as you can, figure out something that you can attach it to that you already know. That's the key bit with learning music, I think. Guy, go for it. Switch your mic on.
With the C major you did on the 5th string,
Yeah.
I noticed that for the A you did all 3 fingers. Is it okay to just use one finger to make the A?
Yeah, that's very common. I would say absolutely. It all depends on the strength of your hand and the kind of neck you have in your guitar. But in an ideal world...
Is it a bad habit to get into, just to use one finger to do the...
No, I don't think it is. What I would say, this would be my answer, and those of you that know me know I never give a straight answer, sorry. I would say that towards the 6th fret of your guitar, or the 7th, I would use 3 fingers, because that gives you considerable power and you'll get a better tone out of it if you want to play the top G. You know, there's a likelihood that if you do that with 1 finger, that the back of your 3rd finger is likely to foul the top G note, the 5th. It'll probably sound like this. So I would say where the frets are wide enough, use 3 fingers. But as you know, because of the way that the guitar is intonated, as you move up the guitar, you would then switch to 1 finger because it kind of forces you into that anyway. So another short answer to your question is that's the classical way, that's the rocker's way. And I would say just learn them both, you know, move them interchangeably. But if you want something which has a really shiny, lovely tone, then I would spend some time trying to make sure you can do it that way because they sound better.
Okay, thanks.
Pleasure. All right. So I asked you 3 questions. Well, actually, I asked you 6, didn't I? Let me give you the answers to these. And I hopefully won't dwell on this because we've got 15 minutes left to talk about something which is really, I think, is particularly beautiful on the guitar. So here are the answers. I asked you to work out an E-flat major and an E-flat minor on 6th, 5th and 4th string roots. Excuse the train going over the roof. All right, so here you go. This is the E-flat major. Now, on the 6th string, the only place you can do it is at the 11th fret. Don't forget, what I'm actually asking you to do when I ask you these questions that might seem a little simple, is I'm actually asking you, can you work out what notes are in them? Can you pitch them by ear? And can you sing them without playing the guitar? So that's what I'm really asking you, but you do that in your own time. So here you go. This is an E-flat. Boo. Here's a B-flat. Boo. Here's an E-flat. Boo. Here's a G, which is the major 3rd. Da. I'm starting to run out of vocal range. That's the 5th. Can't get up there. That's the root. Okay? So that's how you play an E-flat major, using an E-shaped bar chord, also known as a 6th string root. And on the minor version, you just remove that finger, but make sure you can hear the minor 3rd. Don't be one of these guys. I'd like to hear that. Okay. And by the way, the name of the notes in that chord would be E-flat, G and B-flat in the order that they appear in the chord, and when they're minor, it would be E-flat, G-flat and B-flat. Moving on rapidly. Here is E-flat major using an A shape, where the root is based on the 5th string. Now, it's the same interval structure, root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. Exactly the same. The only thing that's missing is there's no top octave on this. Okay, and here's the minor version. Remember, you isolate the 3rd, flatten it a semitone to turn your major chords into minor chords. And then finally, E-flat major all the way up here, which sounds magic if you ask me. That's at the 13th fret, all the way up there. And remember, it's a D shape. A D shape would be that, but we're a semitone higher, so it's a D sharp, or an E-flat if you like. And that would go, my brain seized up there, it would go 13, 15, 16, 15. Okay? Now, if you only learn one thing today, make sure it's that, because that's a lovely chord. And it's minor equivalent. Remember, don't remove that little finger and the 1st finger when you're practicing these chords. Learn how to do that. And once again, as if I haven't made this point enough today, it's the same interval structure, it's just an octave higher. And that's why these 3 chords come from the same family. So we call them, the family name is root 5th, root 3rd, because all of them have that. And then depending whether you've got 5 or 6 strings, then you also have the 5th string, the 5th, and you have the root on top as well. So,
Jamie,
Martin, yeah, go for it, mate.
if you're a masochist, you could also play that version down at the first fret, but you need very long fingers to be able to do that.
Oh, yes, you could. Yeah, of course you could. Yeah, you could do it like that. Well spotted.
I can't do it. I don't have fingers long enough.
Ah, rubbish. Get on with it.
One thing I want to say about the 5th fret A shape.
Mm-hmm.
I have to play it with the 3rd finger bar. My fingers are just too big, even down there. And I just miss out the top E note. I just mute the top E.
Totally fine. Totally fine.
So I then get your sweet chord of the 3rd is the top note. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I said, these things are just, in an ideal world, do it like that. But we all have to just find what our hands are built for with these things. I gave someone a lesson about 3 months ago who actually had no thumb, and he didn't tell me that before we had the lesson. And it was a Zoom lesson. So we started, and then he said, "Oh, there's one thing I should tell you. I don't have a thumb." And I went, "Oh, goodness me, you don't have a thumb." So that was an interesting lesson. But we found ways to learn chords which didn't require that kind of, squeezing technique. That just required pushing against the guitar and using your body to hold the neck forward while he pulled backwards. So there's always ways. Anyway, I still haven't told you the most exciting bit about this, right? So, shut up and listen. Here we go. You can get rid of all of the extra information on the guitar, and it sounds really nice. Now, have you noticed in all of the chords I'm showing you here, we're doubling quite a few notes. We're doubling the root. This one here has a root there, a root there, and a root there. So you've got 3 roots. Now that's a bit of a waste, really. It's really nice, and it's great for that. You can't beat that. You need to be able to do that. But what you can do, which sounds absolutely wonderful on the guitar, is sort of distill the chord so that each note only exists once. Okay? And this will make your chords and your guitar playing sound much more like a Bach piano invention, because he would write like this. Now, what I mean by that is if you just play your root 5th and 3rd with nothing else, then you get this, which is gorgeous. Now, with your minor chord, you'd get that. Now, where this gets really exciting, and you're going to have to read the chart that I've prepared for you for this later on, what you can do, you can invert these chords so that they don't always have to go root 3rd 5. In fact, more commonly on the guitar, it goes root 5th 3rd. But what you can do a process called inversion, where you take those 3 notes and you move them all up. What's the right way to say this? All up one inversion. I'll show you what I mean. It's easier to just show you. Have a listen to this. This is a C major with C in the root. This is a C major chord with E in the root, where every note has jumped up, each string has jumped up to the next note in the chord. That would be this. And then we can invert them again. And then invert them again. So you can take a chord that you know. Now, if you're looking at me going, "Oh, you've lost me now," have a read of the chart, because it's all there for you. I promise I wouldn't talk about something and then just say, "Right, bye." It's there. You can have a look. But just, I'd like you to listen to this, because it's really, really pretty. Oops. It's also really bloody difficult, so it's a good exercise to get that hand talking to that hand and learning some nice shapes. Here they are as minor chords as well. Now, let's say that you're playing a song that you already know, which just has 3 chords in it. Let's say we've got G, C, and D. Now, you could do that for 15 minutes, and it would be fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But if you wanted to try and explore other resources to develop your musicianship, this might be a way to go. see if you can play that chord progression using each of the inversion types that I've written down on that chart for you. So that would be like this. Recognize that as an Elvis tune? So these are all in first inversion. Now let's do them in their next inversion. And the next one. And it sounds lovely. Now, if you mix them around. Ah. Blah, blah, blah. Now, I could just go on and play guitar at you all day, but I'm not here to bludgeon you to death with things. But what I think you should do, because we're just about run out of time, is exactly this principle. First, explore whether you can do it. You'll probably find that they're tricky, and it'll probably take about 3 weeks for the theory to sink in and your hand to catch it so that you can think about it and then do it. These things take a little while to percolate so that you can have an idea and then just get to it. So for a little while, be fine with the fact that it'll be frustrating that you can't do it, but keep trying it. And remember, to turn these little technical exercises into something which develops you as a musician, sing everything that you do, and go back over everything you already know how to do, and make sure you can sing absolutely everything without the reference. So you play the root note and then sing everything else that you're playing on your guitar. And if you can do that, you start to teach yourself the rules of music without the need of a conversation. So for those of you that will come back on these lessons and I'll see you again, you're going to get very bored of me saying the same thing. But that's how you do it. You turn it into something which is a musical experience rather than a technical one. Okay, so if you're up for it, see if you can do that specific example I just came up with there. I played the chords G, C, D, and I played them using each of the 3 inversion types that you can get from that chord. Now, don't do it now. See if you can spend some time with a glass of wine this week and have a go at that. And for those of you that would appear next week, I might ask a couple of you to see how you got on. And as with all of these things, I don't expect you to be amazing at it now. Just take it as something that you could work on. It'll develop your ears. And when you start to hear things that you've studied, it starts to make listening to music even more exciting because you know what they did and you know why they did it as well. That's a lovely thing. So, I think we managed to get through that quite nicely there. Those are the 2 things I wanted to talk about.
Question.
But you can. I was about to say who has questions because now's your time.
All right. Just to clarify, obviously, if you've got one, I'm going to just get this right then. If it's a major chord, 1-3-5 or 1-5-3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But if you do a first inversion, just as long as the 3 is on the bottom, the 5 and the 1 can be any order. It doesn't have to be in order.
No. If you move 1 up, then they all go up. So,
oh, really? So it's always in that order, 1-3-5 and then 3-5-1.
It's always in the order you start on, and then let's say you've gone 1-3-5.
Yeah.
Well, then that's what we call root position. The second position would be 3-5-1. Everything goes up, and then it would be 5-1-3, like that. And you can explore these in as many ways as you want to. The exercise I played there, I played 1-5-3, and then I did 3-5-1. And then I did 5-3-1 for each one of them. And then I applied that across the chords, across the chord progression, because the key bit of advice here is when you come across something which sounds nice and you like it, first figure out why it works. Second, figure out how to do it so that it becomes instinctive. But here's the key bit. Then find something you can already do where you can shoehorn that in and make it relevant to something you can already do so that you're not just learning random stuff with no rationale to deploy it, if you see what I mean. So, cool. Anyone got any questions? I think Martin's got his hand up, haven't you? Go on then.
Jamie, you mentioned the chart. I haven't actually seen that. Have you sent it yet, or?
Yes, it should be Ronnie, have you
Yeah, I emailed
sent
it
that to
out
folk?
earlier with the joining instructions, Martha. Have you received the email?
I've got the email with the link.
No attachment.
The two sheets for today are called the 3 bar chord families.
Oh, they're attachments. Sorry, I didn't say the attachment.
And the inversions of major and minor chords.
I got them.
And
Yeah.
major and
now,
minor chord inversions.
Okay, I didn't scroll down far enough. Sorry.
No dramas.
Oh dear.
Outrageous.
Oh, thank goodness for that.
You've got a lot of guitar cases in that room, Martin. I'm loving it. It's great.
Yeah, just a few.
Just a few. Now, we've got 2 pages of people, so let me just scroll through to the other.
Oh, we've lost him.
Oh, hello, Jamie. What have you done? He's scrolled. He's probably hit the end button or something. Guys, have anybody got any questions? Not that I'm going to be able to answer them, but I'll give them a go. But I'll definitely make sure Jamie answers them. Any questions that haven't been asked? Yeah, Ian.
Yeah, why would anyone build a studio in Putney?
That is a very good question. I think we're going to throw that at him. Actually, Jamie's studio. I think it's in.
I know the answer to that.
What's that?
It's where they recorded the railroad runs through the middle of the house.
I'll definitely ask that, Ian. I think it's a very good question. I'm hoping that the acoustic booths that they use, they've got a little bit of got a bit of noise cancellation or something. I have no idea.
I think they have the same problem at Abbey Road. I was speaking to a sound engineer, and
hello.
Jim, you'll know, but I gather at Abbey Road they had the same issue. That it runs pretty close to the St John's Wood line, and
yes, right.
Yeah, Ian was asking what nutcase would build a really good studio right next to a railway line.
Well, the particular nutcase in question, he's the original mad genius, but he is both of those things. But it's a rehearsal room downstairs, and you wouldn't use the rehearsal room to actually record. This is a mixing studio, so you don't need to. You can just stop when a train goes over. But I'll show you. Have a look around. It's incredible. Hang on. Can you see? Wait a second. All of that stuff down there. There's some beautiful bits and pieces down there. Nice monitors, preamps, and then what have we got over here? Hammond organs, keyboards. It's very nice. It smells like a studio should too, full of really good, hot old gear. It's lovely. Anyway, well, listen, it's past. I've bludgeoned you to death with theory enough. Hopefully that might be something you find useful. Please don't be a stranger if any of that doesn't make sense. I have all of that written out, and we'll send you other bits and pieces if you're scratching your head thinking, what on earth's that chap on about? But hopefully that was fairly concise. So enjoy your evenings, everybody. See you later.
Okay, cheers, Jamie. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks.
Good luck,
Bye.
Jamie. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, Ron.
Thank you.
See you soon. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, John.
Super session.